So once again, it's nice to see you all, and thank you for joining our last webinar within the Strong Association, Strong Advocates Project. We have had a long journey, which started in 2017 within this project, and I do believe you have developed and enhanced your abilities and knowledge. For this reason, I'd like to ask you to write few sentences on how this project has influenced your association in general. It would be great if you could send your thoughts to me by the end of the next week, please. We're going to have the final event towards the end of October. I don't have the answer yet, whether it's going to be an online event or in person, but as soon as I'll know, I'll also let you know. And don't forget about the final report submission date. And if you have any questions regarding this report, please write me. Now it's time to give a floor to Erica, SIBE's international expert. And actually, she's one of my favorite presenters. She has prepared an interesting materials for you. So if you have any questions, please write in chat or ask us during the presentation. I think Erica also would enjoy, this communication, right? Like not waiting until the end, whatever you prefer, Erica, so you can express yourself. So thank you for joining us today, and let's begin.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tina. And I've had the pleasure of working with, so do you all see this banner? Okay, excellent. Yes. It has been my pleasure to begin this journey with all of you. I think it was even last October, so almost a year now, and particularly getting to work with some of the coalitions one-on-one over the last 9 months. And so I'm absolutely thrilled and honored that you've asked me back to talk about today's topic, which is effective communications for associations. And Tina is absolutely right. We have built in some time for question and answer at the end, but this is your webinar. I may be leading it, but what you put into it is really what you're going to get out of it. I do encourage a lot of participation. And if you have a question at any time, please feel free to ask it. I do just ask a favor to either Tina or Vlad. If a question comes up in the comments, I've got a lot going on my screen. I probably won't see it, so please just notify me, okay? All right, so let's begin. So just, as an overview, like why are we here today? What are some of our key learning objectives? For those of you that have done more one-on-one work with me, you know that I am all about, we set the goals and the objectives from the beginning, and then we always refer our work back to those objectives. And so why we're here today is understanding the importance of consistent, active, and regular communications. And by the end of this session, you're going to remember those 3 key words very specifically. And I've created a nice little anagram, if you will, to help you remember that. And this is not only for your communications, perhaps for advocacy, which has been the focus of a lot of the work for the grants with SIBE, but how does it propel your association in general? When you talk about the general goals and objectives you have for your associations, for your members, communications is going to be at the heart of how you actually implement and deliver on those goals. We're going to be looking at the fundamentals for creating a communications plan. Now, I want to emphasize the word fundamentals because, as you will see, there's 9 steps. We're going to go through each of them briefly. And to actually have a thorough, actionable communications plan, you're going to need a little bit more than the hour and a half we have together today. But my goal is for you to be able to walk away confident in the basic building blocks to get you started in developing that plan. And then we're going to go ahead and dig more specifically into some communications platforms, websites, and social media to give you ideas that you can take away for implementing in your websites and social media platforms immediately. And this is going to be a very, very interactive part of the discussion today because we're actually going to be going to real associations' websites and social media, and we're going to be doing a bit of a audit, if you will, looking at, what are some of the highlights, what are some things that could be improved, and to give you a feeling for, well, maybe I see some of my own website or my own social media reflected in this, and how might I want to improve it that way. So to start off, let's just do some basic terminology. When we say association communications, what comes to mind? And I want to hear from you all. What do you think of when you hear, oh, association communications?
Communication with members, first of all.
Communication with members, excellent, very good. What else?
With wider public.
With the public, okay.
With donors and state
donors?
institutions.
Okay. Anything, okay, so what kind of things, so that's good, association communications. I like that members was the first thing that came to mind. You know, but we're talking about then some other stakeholders, you reaching out. What kinds of things do you currently communicate about through your association?
The different communication messages for everyone, because you have to communicate about your services with your members and potential members, and communicate the members' needs to other like state bodies and donor organizations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else come to mind for anyone? And again, this is just to get us warmed up. And it's very early in the morning where I am, so I need to warm up my brain, and I'm looking to you all to help me with that. What other kinds of things do you communicate about through your association? Oh, Salome, are you talking? You're on mute.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Oh, okay. Okay, well here, we'll just go ahead and say, so I'm sorry if you guys see this screen up here, I don't know how to hear it, I apologize. So why is it that we communicate through our associations? What are the functions of it? Well, Anna went ahead and already shared, I think, some of the really core ones, which is about membership. So we are trying to inform our current members. So we're giving out information. We're raising education for those of us that maybe have professional development programs. We're trying to advance individuals in their careers with various types of educational-based opportunities. Also, if one of our organizational goals is to increase our membership, we use communications as a basic way of trying to attract new members. We also might be using our communications to serve the goal of increasing engagement amongst our members. So when we have our advocacy activities, for example, there needs to be a call, you know, for, hey, would you be involved in this campaign that we are doing? Would you please share the messages we're pushing on social media? As we mentioned, education and professional development. If one of your core mandates as an association, let's say, especially if you're a professional association with professional members, it's going to be to help them along in their careers. What are the key areas of knowledge? What are some of the new best practices? What are some of the key skill sets that are required for professionals within your realm? But even with trade associations, I don't know if we have many trade associations, but there are also things where you know, if there have been changes in laws or statutes, and that's a little bit different from the advocacy part, but where you're giving out information or education on things they need to know in order to operate within their industries. Of course, networking. This is one of the biggest benefits for individuals when you ask them, so what is the value of your membership? 9 times out of 10, I always hear them say it is the networking. It is the opportunity to meet other like-minded professionals. It is the opportunity sometimes for getting new jobs or careers, making those kinds of connections. It's the opportunity where, especially if it's more academically oriented profession, where they want to get opportunities to publish their work. So that networking, and as an association, create those connections. You need that through communications. And then of course we have advocacy, which is something we've all been working on. But the only way that you're going to be able to connect with those target actors in the public sphere, whether they be your elected officials, whether they be, you know, the bureaucrats or the public workers, or others that you need to engage stakeholders in your sphere of influence. Now, everything I'm saying may sound like it's, well, kind of obvious, right? I mean, well, yeah, I mean, how you need talking and also writing is probably fundamental to our existence as human beings. Like, we would not have society without some type of communications. But the point of today is for us to not perhaps take the idea of the written or spoken word for granted. We want to be very intentional with what it is we say, who it is we say it to, why it is we say that, and what is it we're trying to achieve with that. because I will tell you all, for example, I talk for a living, like what I'm doing right now. This is a big part of what I do. But in order for me to be effective in my job, like I had to put this presentation together. I was told you have an hour and a half to meet these objectives. So I have to be very specific and intentional with what I am discussing today. I can't have too much information. I can't have too little information. And so what we're going to be talking about today is how you within your associations can be more mindful and intentional with what it is you're saying, so that you can allocate resources and time for the maximum benefit. Okay. Anything else here in terms of, like, we talk about the functions of communications? Is there anything we missed, or anything that someone, maybe you're doing within your association from a communication standpoint, you'd like to bring up? No? Okay. Gosh, it's late for you guys. It's early for me. So we're going to have to get talking here pretty soon, but that's okay. Oh, sorry, that wrong way. Okay, so how do we become not only more intentional with our communications, but how do we become more effective? If we say that we have a purpose or a goal for what we communicate, how do we go about doing that and making sure we can actually achieve that? So who can tell me what we have on the screen right here? Oh, come on, guys, this is an easy one.
Racing car or something like that.
Racing car, excellent. So yes, and I appreciate that you use the more common American terminology of car. I know in most parts of the world it's automobile, but for our sakes, this is a car. And this is going to be your, I know there's a proper word for this, but your anagram or your analogy for remembering how to engage in effective communications. Come on, there we go. It's car. Communications are only effective if they are consistent, if you are active with your communications engagement, and if you're communicating regularly, or car, right? I'm very proud of that. I thought of that myself, I'm not gonna lie. But really, it's when you are thinking about your communications, you also have to be thinking about the regularity, and you have to be thinking about your level of engagement. If you only send out a message once, and it's really dependent upon what type of message it is, what platform of communication you're using, but it doesn't matter what it is. If you only send it out once, the likelihood that people are actually going to get it, they're going to care about it, they're going to act upon it, whatever that action is extremely low. And when you are communicating, let's say you're doing it more than once, you're sending out a message multiple times, you need to make sure that you are being consistent in how you're saying it. If you're regularly using different words, if you're trying to find different ways of saying something to the same audience, the message of what you're trying to communicate could get lost. So that's why consistency is important. And active and regularity are very closely intertwined, but regular just refers more to the expectation. If you've set an expectation with your members, for example, let's say that you send out a monthly newsletter via email. If you start missing a month, let's say now it becomes bi-monthly, and then before you know it, it's every quarter, you're not going to be seen as terribly reliable. And people aren't going, and your own members aren't going to, think that what you have to say is that important. It's like, well, if they had to wait 3 months to tell me instead of 1 month, then does it really matter? So that CAR, again, consistent, active, and reliable, is really important in terms of your association's reputation, your credibility or reliability, as we just talked about, your brand. So who here can, by the way, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Who here understands when we say the word brand, this is a common marketing term, what do we mean by that? Does anybody want to venture?
Brand is something the other people, outsiders, recognize the organization.
Yep.
And
Yes.
then like a symbol.
An
or-
image. Mhm.
An image, yes. In very, very basic, it is all those things, but it is, how do people feel when they see your logo? Or when, Salome says, hi, I'm with HRPA. What is the image that comes to mind? What is that feeling? What is that perspective? And that's where your reputation, your credibility, and reliability come in. If you are not consistent, if you are not active, and you don't have a regular frequency of your communications, it can ultimately impact your brand. Because I think that when Salome goes out and meets current members, prospective members. She does advocacy. Maybe one of the things that people want to say is, hi, Salome. Oh, hi, Salome. When I think of Salome, I think of someone that's trustworthy. And especially when you're doing advocacy, that's important. Well, that's part of your brand. HRPA equals trust. If you're not consistent, active, or regular with your communications, then what does it say about, can I trust you to give me accurate information? Can I trust you to give me up-to-date information? Again, it's not necessarily something that's in the forefront of people's minds, but if you're doing it long enough, then all of that great work that you're doing for your association, if it's not being communicated in an effective way, it can actually hurt any of your organizational goals. And as I put right here, this is also foundational to advocacy. And one thing that we're going to, I'm hoping that, we can convey and learn by the end of this is communications isn't just an individual campaign that you develop as part of an advocacy effort. Your advocacy is actually going to be helped along by having an effective communications program for your association. Think of it as you've already built the foundation and people already have an idea of who you are, so that by the time you go out and you advocate on an issue, you're not having to try to establish who you are and get people to know who you are on top of getting them to then care about your public policy issue. If you can establish a great foundation of association communications, by the time you get to advocacy, all you need to worry about is communicating about the issue itself. So again, having that association communications is going to help propel other efforts, especially in the advocacy realm of what it is you're trying to accomplish, okay? So how do we go about achieving CAR? Again, oh, wrong way. So if you've been in one of my webinars before, you'll know that this is not the first time I've quoted Benjamin Franklin. He is one of the United States founding fathers, very wise person, helped to develop most all of our democracy documents, like our Constitution, what have you. Very, very wise person. And the one that I felt of all of his many famous quotes was most appropriate today was, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. So if you're trying to achieve consistent, active, regular communications, you need to have a communications plan. So before we jump into this, and we are going to there are 9 steps, broadly speaking, and mind you, if any association expert you talk to, if you talk to a communications expert, it may be 8 steps, or maybe they don't have time for all that, and it's 1 step. This is what you're going to see is a generally accepted best practice, but I want to encourage you that whatever it is that you have the time and the resources for, it is better to do some planning than no planning. So when you walk away from here today, I want you to feel empowered with, hey, I have the general understanding, the fundamentals of how to do this, but ultimately you are going to implement and adapt what you can. But before we jump into this, been talking for about 15-20 minutes now. Any questions, observations, anything that anyone wants to share? And Tina, by the way, Tina and Vlad, you're welcome to join in this conversation as well.
I have one question, if it's okay right now to ask.
Hi, Nina.
Hi, Erika. First of all, thanks for this presentation and everything, for being so informative. I have one small question, like what is the best practice? I mean, how many emails can we send per day? Like more than 2 emails, is it okay? Or are we disturbing our members? And how can we I don't know, prioritize the information and everything?
Boy, Nina, you are on the ball. So I'm going to ask you to hold that thought, because we're going to be talking about frequency of communications here in just a couple of slides, okay? But that is an excellent question. Okay.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so let's jump right into it. Step number 1, like I said at the beginning, we set out our objectives for this webinar. Any of you that have worked with me know that I am very much a fan of starting with your goals, and communications planning is no different. First, let's set our communications goals. So the basic questions is, what is it we are trying to achieve by having a communications initiative? If we're sending out an email, we need to attach a purpose to that email. What is it we want to, what are we trying to say? What is it we want the recipient of that email to do? Are we trying to encourage some type of a change or behavior or an action? So one of the best ways to start, though, in setting your communications goals is to try to align them with your organizational goals. just a quick round of a quick poll. Whose organization or whose association here has a strategic plan? And it doesn't have to be formal, doesn't have to be written down. It could be something you talked about, but who here generally has a strategic plan for the organization? And if you could actually just go into the comments, or I think that there's a hand raised, there we go, because I can't see all of you. Okay. See some? Okay, I see some hands coming up. Excellent. So this is, you are actually establishing, you're serving two, we have a phrase in English in the US, you kill two birds with one stone. It means you accomplish two things with one effort. So when you align your organizational goals and creating your communications goals, you are not only setting yourself up for more effective communications, you are also helping to achieve your strategic plan. So what does that look like? So what I did here is I just created some examples of objectives from an organization's strategic plan. This is not specific to any one association, though I am working with a few associations right now who are my clients, and these are just some examples that I pulled out of strategic plans that I'm working with them on, because the other half of things I do a lot of times is strategic planning. So let's say hypothetically that these are objectives that are direct from your strategic plan. So on one hand, it's you want to increase the diversity of your membership. Now, at its core, this strategic objective is all about growing your membership, right? But for this one client that I pulled from, they are recognizing that the average age of their member is 55 years old. It's typically male, and because of his age, on the verge of retirement. So they recognize that the nature of their industry or their profession is changing. And in order from a sustainability point of view, if they want to make sure that they're going to be around 10, 20, 30 years from now, they need to get younger members. They need to get persons who are male and female. They need to get more women in. And in the United States, we have a lot of racial and ethnic diversity. And they also recognize that we need to make sure we get individuals from underrepresented racial and ethnic groups as part of our members. So their particular objective for increasing membership is from this, we need to make this more open and get younger people, get different kinds of people, get more women. So another objective is about membership retention, but their approach to increase retention is by improving their services. So this is about how can we increase the value of our existing members' membership to make them feel like they're getting value or a return on their investment. So how can we improve our professional development offerings? How can we improve their networking, which we talked about as a really important membership benefit before. And then lastly, another example that pulled from a strategic plan is their objective is to effectively represent their members' interests through advocacy. So this is where the public policy lobbying and engagement comes into play. So this is their strategic plan. Now we can go ahead and say, so what might be some communications goals that we can establish that can support achieving these strategic goal objectives? This is just something I came up with as I was developing out. These are just some standard communications goals. And again, these might be appropriate for you. Feel free to use if you're looking at these and saying, oh, actually, that would be great for our association. But this is just for the purposes of our discussion here. So, for example, if we're trying to increase the diversity of our membership, then from a communications point of view, we need to increase our outreach to young professionals. We're talking about individuals in our profession. And so again, I'm going to pick on Solomon HRPA. These would be, students that are just coming out of university, or individuals who have been in the HR practice for 5 years or less, whatever you want to define young professional as. But the fact is, if our membership is increasingly older and we want young people, then we need to target these young professionals. Another goal is looking at, we need to reach new professionals. Let's face it, a lot of people change careers at their midlife, or sometimes even later in life. So there's probably a large amount of HR professionals or those practicing in the human resources realm that are not recently out of college. They're not 25 years old. Maybe they're 35, maybe they're 40, but they're new to the profession. And so they're going to need some support, but they can also help with increasing that diversity of our membership. So we need to target them. And then, of course, there is creating that value proposition for the membership. And that is actually going to work both for increasing membership as well as retaining membership. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but that's how you kind of create that relationship between starting with your organization's goals, whether it be in a strategic plan format or just something that, maybe perhaps your board has expressed, this is what we want to achieve. And then translating that into, okay, well, then how do we align our communications efforts to achieve that? So when you're talking about increasing the retention of membership, maybe one way is to advance or elevate the profile of individual members, doing more of like, here we have a member of the week, or, a highlighting an organization, something to make them feel special. Because nothing resonates with people as human beings. It's not about association, but as human beings, but nothing resonates more than being recognized and appreciated. And that's a very easy and cost-effective thing that you can do. Strengthening your internal communication with members, making them feel like they're not forgotten, making them feel like you care about them. And then also creating partnerships with like-minded organizations. Sometimes creating those new opportunities at networking means being able to connect them with different resources or different organizations within their professional realm. And then, of course, when we talk about advocacy, our communication is to basically raise and maintain awareness of all the wonderful things our association is doing in public policy advocacy. Any questions before we move on to step 2? And I promise we'll get a little bit faster as we go. But any questions in terms of how you can take organizational goals and align them in creating your communications goals or observations?
Erica, I have a request. Please don't go faster. If you would speak slower, that would be even better. Thank you.
Sure. Tina, do you think there's anything that I said too fast that I should? Okay, we're going to slow it down, but keep the pace going. How about that?
That's great.
Okay. So let's say you've identified your communications goals, and those communication goals are beautifully aligned with your association's overarching goals. Now you got to figure out, who do we want to talk to? So if we have these communications goals, for example, we want to increase our outreach to young professionals. We need to figure out, well, who are the young professionals? Who do we currently communicate? Again, using this example of young professionals, who do we currently communicate with that could be considered in this young professionals grouping? Okay. Who else that we're not currently communicating with should we be communicating with in order to develop this targeted outreach to young professionals? Part of that targeting your audience is also, who do you need to influence? This is very closely aligned to advocacy, although in this case, it's not about public policy advocacy. This is more about making friends and influencing people. So what kind of knowledge or attitudes or behaviors are you trying to change in order to reach those communications goals? An important thing that we're also talking about here is a term called audience segmenting. So what audience segmenting means is when you take a group of people, a target audience, and you break it down into its component parts. So you'll notice earlier when I was talking, you can talk about members, but who comprises your members? If you're talking about wanting to increase your diversity, then you need to think about, okay, we have our young professional members. We have our new to the profession members. We have our mid-career professionals. We have our close to retirement professionals. You can also think of your members, if you are more of a trade association, you can think of them in terms of industry. So who are our, let's say if you're in the manufacturing realm. So who are our manufacturing members? Who are our distributor members? Who are in the general supply chain members? This is going to be really important because when you're identifying your target audiences, you need to be able to break down on a lower level because that's going to impact some of the next steps we're talking about. But let's go ahead and just do a quick exercise as a group. So communications goals. Let's start with number 1, develop outreach program to young professionals. So I didn't fill this in because I was thinking maybe we could fill it in together, but I think it might just be easier if we verbalize it, right? So let's say, who do we currently communicate with that are young professionals? Does anyone here amongst your associations have targeted outreach to young people, whether they be young professionals or just youth groups or anything like that, that we can use as an example?
Yes, actually, I mean, we have launched the EBA Youth like new platform here in EBA in April, August 2020. And now we have like 16 board members who are young professionals between the ages from 21 to 34. And yeah, I mean, the mission is like to support young people in policymaking process. I mean, to support their involvement in policymaking processes. And our second objective is like to help them support, how to say it, entrepreneurship and employment in youth, which is very problematic issue nowadays in youth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, keeping in mind that the target group is between the ages from 21 to 34. I mean, they are also like maybe our future members. So I think that this is like beneficial. I mean, from our side and from their side as well. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's talk about that. So you said, I'm sorry, you said there were 74 young professional members or 64?
No, 16 board
Oh,
members.
16, sorry. Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, that's great. So let's consider those, let's think about those young professionals for a moment. They fall in this category of who do we currently communicate with? So where did these young professionals come from? How did you find them? Did you go to a university that they all attended, or are they part of some other group?
Well, the 16 board members were selected from our member companies. I mean, we asked our member companies to like nominate their best people within this age group. And now we are actually in the process to like open this youth community. I mean, this youth wing for other people, young people as well. And we are planning a training course, and we will like I mean, post about this on maybe JobsG or any other platforms in social media as well. And we are going to select like best young people, I guess, and provide trainings. And they will become like EBA youth members then in future. So they will stay with us. They will be like alumni, and we will like keep in touch.
Okay, so now you can see the behind the scenes of how I developed these, but I think this is great. Okay, so who do we currently communicate with in terms for this YP effort? In your case, and I'm just going to take the first thing you said, which was we found young professionals from among our member companies. Brilliant. Yeah. I mean, that's where you have the immediate connections. Where else though, and this is moving forward, where else should you be sourcing young professionals? So you have your member companies, where else could we consider?
For example, for us, I mean, we have, we are, how to say, in partnership with USAID. We have interns like periodically. And these interns are already like trained for 3 months regarding these economic reforms and everything. And we have quite good practice there because so far we had like 11 interns and all of them are now in employment.
Okay, excellent. And I would put them again in who we're currently communicating with, but you know, maybe that's enough. Maybe you just expand your outreach amongst your member companies for more young professionals. You know, I would encourage you though, as part of maybe just an exercise with your team to think about like, okay, where else could we potentially be finding young professionals as part of this outreach? You know, so maybe non-member companies could be a start, or maybe you start doing direct outreach to universities, you know, for you know, students that are going to school for entrepreneurship or business or something like that. This is all about understanding, so who are our target audiences, breaking them down, and then thinking about all the different ways that we might be able to reach them. Okay, excellent. So just for purposes of time, I'm going to move on. Nini, thank you so much. I'm probably going to be calling on you again at some point. So
thanks.
Okay. So I'm just going to keep it in this mode. Can everyone see this okay? I know it's a little bit smaller. Okay, great. So then the next step is developing messages that are tailored for your target audience. So this is really key because what you say should align to what that segment of your audience cares about. So this is an example of you are not telling people what you want to say. You are telling them what they need to hear in a way that they will understand it best. And that can that might sound like it's a little bit counterintuitive, and it's like, well, I mean, I'm trying to get them to do something. Why wouldn't I say it however I want to? And it's because different people interpret information differently. There's different ways of persuading people, but more importantly, you need to couch whatever it is you're trying to convey, or if you're trying to call them to some sort of action, in a way that they will care about. So when we're talking about our young professionals, or we're talking about our new professionals, or we're talking about our current members, you got to think, what do they care about? What are the needs of young professionals? What are our current members' needs? And by the way, I'd encourage you to segment your current members. What is relevant and useful to them? And this is a great exercise for, let's say you were to go ahead and lay out a whole message, and you can literally start taking out, literally putting lines through things that are not directly relevant or useful to people. That helps to create a more concise message. It's more targeted, it's more directed. And it makes people feel like you actually care about them. So this is where a lot of customization comes into play. But when you're doing those customizations, you don't want to lose the goal of whatever that message is, which is, are you calling them to action? So in this case, it's, are we trying to get them to become members? Are we trying to get them to renew their membership? Are we trying to get an organization to partner with us? So you always have that call to action in there, but again, you're crafting it in a way that they care about. So here is an example, and this is what we would just call a very basic fundamental overview of a communications plan. So right here, I've already filled in, you had your key stakeholders, and I drew these from our communications goals. So we have our young professionals, our new professionals, current members, and again, in real life, if you're developing this plan, you would segment out those different types of members, potential partner organizations, and government officials. And each of these align to at least one of those communications goals that we created. Again, now we have that desired action, which is, well, what do we want from them? And we really want to join our association, to renew their membership, to partner with us, or in the case of advocacy, to adopt our proposals. Now we come into where we're developing the message. So what do these groups care about? This is a very simplistic breakdown. I mean, young professionals care more about job opportunities, but for the purposes of this exercise, we're just going to choose one thing that each of these stakeholder groups care about. So in this case, young professionals, we want them to join our association, and they really care about job opportunities because they're fresh out of school or they have very little experience, and this is the career field they want. I'm going to come back to HRPA. They really want to become human resources professionals, but they need help finding their first job, or maybe finding that next job after they've had a little bit of experience, or maybe they were interns. So what is the message? And I'm taking, you know, some examples here. What is the message that we want to craft to young professionals that we want to join our association that meets their interest or need of finding jobs? Anybody? And again, this doesn't have to be beautifully, perfectly worded, just an idea of what might that message look like.
Joining our association will give you opportunities to meet the potential employers, or I don't know, something like that.
I love it. That's great, especially because I gave you 5 seconds to think of it. That's perfect. That is, now, of course, when you put that actual message in an email, in social media, in a flyer, it's gonna look different from that, right? But that is the core message.
Yes.
By joining our association, we can connect you to your future employer. Yes. Brilliant. Okay, let's go down the line. Okay, so same with new professionals. So again, like young professionals, we want them to join our association, and they're also interested in job opportunities, because let's face it, they may have years of experience in a different field, but they're transitioning in their job careers. But the kinds of job opportunities they might be looking for will be a little bit different, because unlike young professionals, they are bringing skill sets to the table, right? May not be specific to their new industry, but work experience of different types means transferable skill sets. What's also interesting about this group, though, is they need professional development, because they recognize that they have skills and they have work experience, but they need to find a way to make it work in their new industry. So they need help with professional development. For these folks, I think we could use the same message. Joining our association will give you opportunities to meet professional employers. But what else might the message be to this group when it comes to professional development?
Here, we may emphasize that we have variety of courses, professional development courses, or some webinars or some experience sharing evenings, so that professional development can be ensured.
Education you need to advance in your career. Beautiful. Again, what the final product looks like, where it goes, can be a little bit different, but that is the core message. And you see, it's kind of like what you're saying to the young professionals, but a little bit different. And it directly meets their needs, but you're getting the same message across, which is join our association. Let's go ahead and do one more. Let's say current members. So in this case, you just want them to renew their membership. And their interest as members is value. What am I getting for the membership fee that I pay every year? So what kind of a message might we want to communicate to our current members that lets them know that your membership has value? You get a lot for what you pay for.
Is there anything else we can do for you?
Okay. So maybe we are taking suggestions for added member benefits. That could be one. But you'd say that in a way to let them know that you are listening, you are responsive, you care about them. Okay. Maybe it's just a matter of reminding them of all of the benefits that they have. Because a lot of times members, they might join for 1 or 2 reasons and not realize that there's 10 or 12 extra good reasons for them to join. So then maybe it's, look at all the benefits we offer. Something that's very exciting. So, but you all get the idea. So again, you have a core message here, but you're saying it's slightly different to each audience segment depending upon their needs and interest. All right, let's go ahead and move on. I don't want to fall too far behind time. Now we're going to talk about delivering those messages. So this is where you might go through and audit your current communications platforms. How do these individual target audiences get their information? So it's, if we maintain a website, who is going to our website? What types of people typically derive information by going to a website? If you're using social media, I know that my understanding is in Georgia, Facebook is probably the most commonly used social media platform for professionals. In the United States, it's actually LinkedIn, but most organizations still have a Facebook page for serving different purposes. So as you're looking through those platforms and understanding, so where do people get their information and will they actually be visiting or using these different types of platforms? You need to also ask, like, is this cost effective? Because maybe you found a tool that is really great and could get to a lot of people, but if it's too time consuming, if it costs too much, then you just have to really balance, like, so what is the return on our investment there? And yeah, like, do you have the skill and time to use it? So let's go ahead and continue with our audiences. So, and talk about the activities. So when we think of young professionals, and this is where I'm going to need your help because I don't know enough about young people in Georgia and where they get their information. But if we're trying to convey the message from the earlier slide, which is our association can connect you to your future employer. Where do young people in Georgia typically get their information?
I think there are like several platforms here like JobsG, and these announcements should be posted there. And also social media plays a big role here. So there are several groups, career development and such kind of groups. So young people also check these groups, and plus universities, there are university career development centers. So if we provide this information to universities, then they might disseminate this information.
Excellent. So when I ask for something like social media, that's just what SM here stands for. So in the United States, there is a big shift that's happening. So for example, the professionals in my general age group, which we wouldn't be considered young professionals, we might fall more in that new professionals group, but we were the generation of Facebook. I'm talking about the 30s, early 40s something group. So if you are trying to reach out to new professionals in my age group, then Facebook and also LinkedIn is a very effective mechanism. But if you're trying to reach out to the 25 to 30 group, or I'd even say 20 to 30-year-old group, they're not on Facebook. I know this for a fact because I have a godson who is 20, and he reminds me all the time that, Facebook is so old, Aunt Erica, making me feel very old, but that's what the youth do. For them, they're on Instagram. They're also on this site called TikTok. I don't know how popular those are in your sites, but in the United States, as an association, if you're trying to get YPs, you need to have an active Instagram page. Sure, go ahead and use Facebook, but use Facebook for other purposes, but not for reaching your YPs. Yeah, they're kind of on LinkedIn probably because their boss or their mom told them to do so, but that's not the most effective way to reach them. So even when you say social media groups, think very specifically about, okay, so what type of social media groups might this group like? And if you're not sure, ask. Survey your members. A very simple 2-3 question max survey, something that takes 2 minutes or less to complete. Survey your members, and you literally ask them, one of the questions is, so where do you get your information from? And then you list a bunch of different social media website platforms. You can go ahead and list your website. If there's industry relevant websites or information sources, if there's university career development centers, you just ask them and tell them, select all that apply. And from there, you can then audit and see where your different target audience segments get their information. And then you can adapt your platforms accordingly. Any questions about this before we continue to move on? All right. So now we're talking about considering our resources. So this is the who is going to be responsible, or what kind of human resources do you need in order to maintain these different social media platforms, in order to maintain our website. If we're doing emails and there are regular communications, who do we need to be doing that? Who is going to be doing our newsletter, if that is an example of something that you do? Who is responsible for each step in that communications, and what are they doing? Also for resources, what kind of technology do we need? So something fortunately like social media is free, thankfully, but your website isn't necessarily. If you have, there are a lot of associations that like to have members only portals on their websites, which is where you log in and it's for members only access. Again, it's often promoted as a member benefit because only members can get it. But oftentimes that requires coding. You need IT support for that. If you are doing a newsletter, perhaps it's a physical newsletter that goes out, but just think about how much is all this going to cost and what kind of technology do we need. And if you've gotten this far in your plan and you realize, okay, in order for us to adopt this particular technology, in order for us to hire these staff, or perhaps you're outsourcing your communications but you're paying someone to do it, and you realize, wow, we don't have enough money or people to actually do this. That's when you have to then start thinking creatively, well, how do we bridge the gap between the resources we have and what we need? Maybe that means going back up earlier into your plan and changing and adapting to your current resource situation. Or maybe that means you go to a different element of your organizational strategic plan and you're looking at revenues generation. Now you're developing out a revenues plan in order to support your communications plan. Again, I'm not saying that this needs to be terribly expensive for your association. I'm also not saying that just because you realize maybe you don't have enough money or people or time to do something, then you should scrap it all together. This is what we call an iterative process. iterative, excuse me. As you learn more information, as you go further along, you go back and adapt and change, and there's nothing wrong with that. So again, for time's sake, we're not going to fill this in, but at this point in the exercise, I would say, okay, so we have the action for the young professionals. We know what they're interested in. We have the message, join, and we can connect you to your future employer. We know where we're going to post this information, university groups, specified social media platforms. But now it's going to be, okay, so who is actually going to be making the connections with the university in order to get them to post a message on their career pages? So that is a human resource. So who's actually doing this and who's responsible for it? Then there's a question of, well, is it going to cost us anything? Some of these, I mean, I think for the most part, university like career resources would probably be free. But if it's a private career resource group, you might have to pay a fee, like an advertising fee. So just thinking about the different resources for each of these key stakeholders that you're communicating with. Now, Nini, we are to your question, frequency. What is too little? What is too much? How often do we send our customized messages to our target audience segments? I'm sorry to tell you, but it all depends. It depends on the audience segment. It depends on the topic. And it most certainly depends upon the platform or the communication method used. So Nini, let's go back to your example where you said, well, emails. How many emails is 2 emails? Or how many emails is too much? Is 2 a day? Tell me a little bit about an example of an email that you have in mind. Who are you sending this email to? What is that email about? What's the message in it? And what are you trying to get that audience to do? What's the call to action?
Yeah, for example, I have like 3 news for our members, relevant to our members. So first one is invitation to PPD or invitation to, I don't know, networking event. And also I have new draft laws that was recently drafted. And I want to like send this information to our members. So how do I act? I mean, do I send like 3 emails in a day, or how to act? Yeah, that's my question.
Okay, fair enough. So, okay, you have 3 different messages or 3 different topics, we'll say, for your emails.
Yeah.
The first thing is, no, do not send them all in one day. I would say keep those topics separate. So don't combine them all into one email, only because, and I see you shaking your head, so you know this already. For everyone else's benefit, this is what we call burying the lead. In journalism, journalists are taught to write in a very specific way where they pull out the headline and the most important information at the very top of their articles. Because if they don't, you have something that's called burying the lead, which means the information is so far down in the article, people never even get to it, and then they don't understand what the point of it was. If you are putting too many different types of information in one message, in this case, an email, then the likelihood is they will take nothing away. So instead of taking one thing away from one email, they've now taken nothing away from the 3 pieces, from the 3 kinds of topics you have in there, because you've buried the key information. So you're already on the right track with keeping that type of information separate. Do not send them all on the same day, because you risk doing the same thing, which is one, burying the lead. They are now overwhelmed with information and they don't know which is most important. But also you run the risk of, if you send information too frequently, that tells people that, okay, well, I don't really know what's important or not important, and people might stop reading your emails. Okay, so this is the kind of thing where, when do I send this particular piece of communication? One, it depends upon its level of importance, and importance is relative. So for the PPD, for example, that's an event. It has it's happening at a very specific time on a very specific date. So that is time sensitive, which then helps to dictate its level of importance. I would say your first email about that PPD event needs to go out as soon as you have the key information about that event. Even if you don't have the location, but let's say you've established the date. At least a month out would be ideal because you want it to be on people's calendars. Remember, your members are very busy, and especially yours, Nini. I know that when you're talking about entrepreneurs and business people, they need notice. So as soon as you have that date and time, even if you don't have the location booked, you notify your members. Then maybe a week out, or in another form of communication, maybe is in a social media post, or if you have a newsletter, you include it again, so that they have a different way of seeing it from a different communications platform. That reinforces in their mind where it's like, oh, they're talking about this again. It must be important. Then let's say 2 weeks out from the meeting, you send another notice. Hey, reminder, we are finalizing the event. Here's some more information. And I'm assuming people have to register, right? Push that, if there is a registration requirement, you push the registration, and registration is the lead. You want to have that at the very top. Then as you're getting closer to the event, you're sending targeted communications to those that have already registered, and you're sending slightly different communications to those who haven't registered, but you want them to. But you don't want to send those in the same day of those other 2 emails, because when something is time sensitive, you need that to be the focus of their attention. And if they're getting 3 emails from you, they don't know what's most important. Maybe the next day or a couple of days later is when you might send the second email about the second topic. But at the end of the day, it also depends on your audience. If you know that there is a group of your members, for example, who just crave information, that are emailing you all the time and they want more information, feel free to communicate with them as frequently as they do with you. But in general, just prioritize, send out separately, and with enough space that people feel like the individual messages are important enough that it needs their attention and the importance doesn't get lost, and cross communicate to different platforms. So if they see it in email, and then they see it on Facebook, and then they see it posted maybe in a professional online magazine, that helps to reinforce the importance of it. Does anybody else have any suggestions when we talk about frequency, or have an example of how you go ahead and determine when you send out emails or post messages on social media and why?
Please,
Yeah,
can you
actually,
repeat the question?
Sorry.
Go ahead. I see Anna. Go ahead.
It depends on the segment you're communicating with, because in our cases, we're communicating with cross people. Actually, you have to call them or send an SMS, which is because sometimes they don't have internet. So as long as you know the specifics of their living environment, you have to somehow adapt to that. And we are communicating like 2 days in 2 days distance, because otherwise you have they will forget. If you will send an email a month ago, they never come to an event. So it always depends on the audience.
Excellent takeaway. It always depends on your audience, and you have to treat them as individuals. I love it. Thank you so much. I think, I'm sorry, I can't see everyone, but there was another.
Russo wanted to say something.
Sorry, I'm unmuted. I didn't get the question, so my question was just, could you repeat the question?
Oh, I was just asking for examples of anyone here. How is it you determine when you want to send out a message and how often you want to send out that message? Like, what are the factors you think about when making those decisions? But you know, go ahead and think about that, because we're going to have the opportunity to talk about this a little bit more, okay? The next step is, now that you have steps 1 through 6 figured out, execute. And it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so for each activity, for each tool, for each resource, what steps do you need to take? By when? Who is responsible? Pretty straightforward, but now is that time where you take the action. I like So those of you who've been in my webinars before, you've probably seen this. It's called a Racy Chart. This is a very simple tool for assigning roles and responsibilities. And this isn't just for communications. You can do this for advocacy. You can do this for project management or program planning. But basically what you do is, in this case, for our purposes, I said, okay, so when it comes to our website, who is responsible? So who is actually participating in the work? Who's actually designing the website? Who's coding the website? Who's making content updates to the website? Or, for Facebook, who's responsible for actually posting on the website or responding to questions, and so on and so forth. Accountable is the person who signs off on the work. So this is not necessarily the person who's physically posting on Facebook or physically coding the website, but this is going to be the supervisor or someone with a level of authority to say, okay, the person who's responsible can move forward. You have consulted, which is a C in Racy, this is when you're seeking opinions. So for example, if you are the individual who's posting on Facebook or on Twitter or Instagram or whatever website, maybe you say like, okay, well, Instagram, coming back to the American example, this is for our young professionals because we know young people are on Instagram. And we have this message about job opportunities because remember, we determined that they care about job opportunities. But you know what? I don't use Instagram very often. So maybe I need to consult with a couple of our young professionals. Ask them, so what is the best way to utilize Instagram? Or how would you word this? So that's just where you're getting some support and consultation. And then informed is just when you're letting people know about your progress. And the informed part is when you're probably telling your board, for example, or telling your director, hey, we had 10 likes on this post on Facebook, or we had 20 shares on Twitter, so it's reporting out. So again, this is just a tool you can consider using if you come to that point where you're just like, we need to just organize ourselves internally for who's doing what. Then we evaluate the plan. This is, I'm not going to go into much detail on this, but we're going to have the opportunity when we're looking at some websites and social media platforms to kind of evaluate. But really, this is how do we know that we are achieving the desired results for the communications we're sending out? So if our goal, our communications goal, was to increase our outreach to young professionals, remember, this is thinking back to step one. How do we know when we have actually, what does that outreach look like, and how do we know when it's increased? So this is establishing metrics. Is this increasing it could be the number of new young professional members. It could be the number of new followers on your social media that are within a specific age range or from a specific group, like a university group, for example. How often do you need to evaluate? And that really depends. So again, you're not done just because you've implemented your communications plan. You need to regularly evaluate if you're actually meeting your targets. And once you've evaluated, it's time to what we call course correct. So if you're not reaching your targets, why not? What's not working? What is getting in the way? At what point in the plan, maybe it's with our audience segment we identified, maybe the message isn't quite right. Maybe we're not using the right social media platform. Whatever it is that you identify through your evaluation process, now is your opportunity to go back and fix it. Okay, so here you are. And again, I'm going to go ahead and send this presentation to Tina when we're all done here so you can have this. But this is your framework for a communications plan through 9 steps. And again, maybe all 9 steps aren't going to work for your organization. Maybe you don't have time to implement all of them. That's fine. You have the foundation for it. And it's always better to do a little bit of planning than no planning at all. That is my heart-to-heart takeaway as one busy association professional to another. Do what you can. All right, so now we're going to talk about some key tips and tactics for effective communications. And what I've done here is we're going to do this in 2 parts. It's going to be tips and tactics for effective websites, and then tips and tactics for effective social media. And for this, we are just going to be talking about some real life examples of association websites and social media. So let me go ahead and pull this first one up. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go over some of these, but I'm going to be asking questions of you all to tell me what it is you see. So this is an American association called the National Health Council. And what are this is their landing page. So you go to nationalhealthcouncil.org, and what are some of the first things we see? Well, First of all, I see a very attractive photo. This is a family. Now, I happen to have a young son, a little bit younger than this guy, but right away I look at this and I say, that's my family, right? Or you get this sense of family. So even with the imagery I'm drawn in, I scroll down, putting patients first. That's essentially why they exist in a nutshell. So you don't, I mean, they probably have their vision somewhere, they probably have their mission somewhere, but without going any further in their website, I am clear on what they care about. That's really important to have on a landing page. I'm going to come up here because almost all websites have like call this a ribbon or some type of an area where you can find more information in the website. But let me see if this is easily organized. So I'm interested in possibly joining this organization. So what information do I need? Cool. They have an entire tab just on membership. Let's go ahead and explore that, shall we? So membership, okay. So we have the general information about our members. This is what I like. From the beginning, they tell us who their members are and how many they have. So in this case, I as an individual can't join because this is for organizations and businesses. That's fine, but let's say I am part of a health-related organization or business. This tells me there's 140 of them. This includes the nation's leading patient organizations. That tells me that they have influence. So for your websites, you want to consider putting in a little bit of information about your members. It can be numerical, like the size or quantity of members you have. But maybe in your case, you don't have a ton of members, or in the case, if you have businesses or organizations that are members, maybe it's not about the number, but what about the quality? What can you tell me about the type of members? Because that'll then tell me if this is a good fit for my organization or for me as an individual. Right here, one of the most important things is the member benefits. This is what we in business terminology call WIFM, W-I-I-F-M. What's in it for me? You need to have your member benefits or something that draws people in. So, okay, I have an understanding of who is a member. And boy, that reminds me of myself. Maybe I could be a member, or maybe my organization could be a member. But then immediately following that is what is my return on investment? What am I or my organization getting out of this? So right away, they have the most important information easily accessible to me. And then they have a little bit more information in detail about some of those benefits. Okay. Now, if I had I won't say a criticism, but if I had a suggestion for this organization, this right here, the contact us, I would put this on the homepage. Maybe it doesn't say interested in joining NHC, but it could be questions or it could be join us. But you want to give people, and it could be your current members, it could be prospective members, potential partner organizations. You want to give them the opportunity, and you want to give them many opportunities to contact you, because the likelihood of someone joining as a new member your organization based on a cold call is actually very low. But the likelihood of them joining after one direct engagement, whether that be a phone call or an email, there's studies on this, it actually increases by 10%. If you are engaging and communicative with them, you have guaranteed a member if you can contact them up to at least 5 or 6 times. After that, you see a decreasing return on investment. But the important thing is you need to give them the opportunity to contact you. Okay, so that's just kind of an overview. And then of course, you know, if we're talking about advocacy, I click right here and look, there is a whole list of their issue areas. And if any one of these issue areas matters to me, I can go in and learn more. They talk about the value of their advocacy. So what this comes down to, and I'm going to go ahead and switch back over to this, is when we talk about what are some key tips and tactics for effective websites. This is the essential information you need to have on your individual websites if you don't already. And some of it might be appropriate for your landing page. Some of it might need to go on other pages. But the important thing is that it's easy to find this information. So in my case, the example I just gave you, right away, they had very attractive graphics, and they use graphics that would speak to me as someone both as a family person, but as a healthcare professional, right? Because they did healthcare. And they were very clear about their values in the very beginning. So that drew me in, and that made me want to go to different pages. But you need to have upfront and clear, if one of your communications goals to grow your membership, you need to have information about your member benefits. You need to be very clear on the process for becoming a member. And you also want to talk about your current members, because if people can't see themselves within your organization, they're not going to be likely to join or even to contact you. And as you see, contact information is key. Because you all are engaged in advocacy, you want to talk about what your policy priorities are. You want to brag about yourselves. What have you done in advocacy and what have been the results? Because another thing is, if I'm someone that wants to join an organization because I feel your advocacy could benefit me, but I don't see that you've been successful, or I don't see that you've been active. Let's think car. If you're not consistent, if you're not active, if you're not regular in communicating what you're doing with advocacy, then that's going to tell me that that's not really a benefit, or there's not value there. So you need to talk about what it is you're doing, what's coming out of it. And then of course, if there's any call to actions, if you want your current members to get involved, if you want non-members in, different stakeholder groups to get involved, you need to have a clear call to action. And then of course, for those of you that offer any type of educational professional development, if you have events, I strongly recommend having a ribbon or something on your landing page that says upcoming events, because that's let people know that it's like, oh, again, here's yet another member offering and a benefit, opportunities, programs, resources, those need to be clearly organized. So any questions about that? Or does anyone want to talk about, is anyone thinking about revamping their website? Or, is there anything that they've seen in other websites that, may be relevant for this conversation to share with the group?
So actually we are working now. We got some funding to renew our website. So actually when you enter, you see two different sites where you can visit the information about the association and go for like quality crafts where you can actually buy. So these are like two main pages, because like selling our members' products is one of our main goals as an association. So these are like two main.
Okay, excellent. Anyone else wants to talk about, maybe what you're thinking about with your website, or want any clarity on some of these key tips and tactics that we just put out here? Okay, I want to show you though an example of, I'm not going to say that this is not a good website, but I want us to kind of explore an example of a website that could be a little bit better. Okay, so this is the California Society of Certified Public Accountants, CPAs. So accountants. Full disclosure, I have no relationship with Cal CPA. I'm not engaged with them in any way. This was just something I came across in our research. Now, Cal CPA, and this is a very important point for when we go to our social media, they have 45,000 members. This is just for the state of California. So the United States is made up of 50 states. California is the largest. California has one of the largest economies in the world. Not the United States, the world. They are larger than most countries' economies. So they're going to have a lot of accountants, right? But amongst their membership, they have 45,000. But because I know that there's a lot more accountants than that in California, they still have more market to capture, right, in terms of their members. But when I was looking at this website, there were a couple of things that didn't resonate so strongly with me. And I want to ask some of you, when you're looking at this website, what are some of the things that come to mind? Like, how do you feel when you're looking at this website?
Overloaded, kind of too much
Yes.
for one page, gets you disoriented.
That's exactly what I felt when I first came to this. This is very busy. All the information I need is probably here, but it's like, I don't know where to begin. Excellent. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Anything else? And by the way, if you see positive things on here, there are good things on here, so that this isn't supposed to be an entirely negative exercise. But, what are, we talked about contact, information. We
No,
talk about
information
membership.
probably is good, but it could be just maybe a kind of a link or some caption that you could click and go. Otherwise, too much photos that it's difficult to comprehend, really.
Yeah.
The information like ethics exams or whatever, probably it's important for them and it should be here, but not this way, I assume.
Yeah. So you know what, let's also, this was, so let's go to their members. Let's just do, an overview. Okay, so I'm a certified public accountant in California. I think I might want to join. So what were some of the things that we discussed are really important about your membership page that you need to have? So first things first that I am noticing that's not here is, what do your members look like? I mean, CPAs, okay, so that is a profession. But California is huge. There's a lot of different types of CPAs. Here, let's see. Oh, we have a who we are. Maybe that's on here. Let's check it out. Okay. So I now have to go into other links. So I'm now 2 links in and I can't find any information on what their members look like or the numbers. Okay, let's try a fact sheet. Fact sheets are great, right? Okay. Okay, so we have strategic priorities, vision, mission, core values. So remember how I told you all that they have 45,000 members?
Mm-hmm.
When I was preparing this, I had to Google that because after 5 minutes of searching on this website, I couldn't find it. Now, again, this is a very successful association as far as I can tell. And again, I have nothing but gratitude for them. I don't know them.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had to go to Google because I couldn't find basic information after 5 minutes, as a prospective member, that's a red flag. Okay. So that's just an example of why it's really important to have, okay, so let's go back, let's say, all right, I don't care how many members they have, I kind of want to join. Well, okay, there's a benefits page, great. Okay. Connections, okay, that means networking, advocacy, but I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I don't want to be negative because this is actually some great information about advocacy. But I think, as was mentioned earlier, the overwhelmingness of the page detracts from the benefits. So again, they're successful, they're doing something right. Now I want us to go over to social media. All right, we're going to go do exactly what we did just now with some websites, but let's talk about what are some key essential information for your social media pages. Okay, one that I pulled up is, so this is, Nini, I hope you don't mind, but when I was, again, researching for this presentation, I wanted to look at some of the associations that are within the site network. And I gotta say, I was really impressed with EBA's Facebook page. And this is the public one, not any of the private pages. So
Great, thanks. Yeah.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And I wish David was here because then, he's right here. But so what were some of the things that impressed me? Let me tell you guys. So first and foremost, I like how, oh no, did my screen? Okay, my screen is freezing, sorry. So right in the about section, building European standards and values in Georgia, very clear. Just like that healthcare webpage we went to, I immediately understand in very clear language what they care about. This is an impressive number. 33,862 people like this, including one of my friends. You have 35,000 some people following this. Now, this is a pinned post, which Nini, I don't know if you're the one who managing this, was very strategic. Even though this is from April 30th, you have the opportunity within Facebook to kind of elevate older posts. Why does that matter in this case? Because when I'm scrolling down, I'm looking, okay, this is about the EBA of Georgia, great. This is what caught my attention. This post has 1,000 likes. That's a lot. That's pretty good. And yet you have some comments, but when you pin it, it takes it to the top of the page, and that gives it more exposure, which means more people can like it and gives opportunity for more people to engage. So, but then as I scroll down, I see, oh, look, there's a post from 3 hours ago. And then there's a post from 19 hours ago, a post from 21 hours ago. So this is a very active page. So when we talked about car, they're hitting a nail on the head, like they are getting the active part of it. It's also very regular. Like I can actually come to expect, and this could be, you know, a good or a bad thing for the staff, but it's like, you've now set my expectation as a follower that I can expect something on probably a daily basis. So that's where the regularity comes in. If it's not one day on Facebook, that's fine, you know. But something like Twitter is totally different, you know, where it needs to be constant. So that's an example of that one. I want to go back to our friends at Cal CPA. Again, I'm not picking on them, I promise you. But I went to Cal CPA's Facebook group, okay? And actually, I mean, you know, this is clean, this is straightforward. They have, okay, they're a thriving community of passionate CPAs. I like that language. That's pretty great, but I'm going to keep this page up and I want you all to tell me some things that jump out to you. Is there anything that you notice comparing to the EBA, for example, that we just looked at?
The date, for example, September 1, the first post.
Okay.
But it's pinned as well, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's pinned September 1st. Okay, but here's the thing.
Then
So
likes, I guess, for the pin post.
There's 3 likes on the pin post, and it's been up for 29 days now. Let's just say that whatever their goal is for their Facebook page, I don't think that that is what they had in mind. So again, I'm not going to say it's bad, and you know, maybe they have a specific focus for this Facebook page, which is not for, you know, a huge audience. But I would suspect that if they pinned this post, it's probably because they want to get this information out, and it's not really getting out in the way that they want because they only have 3 likes. And you notice they don't have any shares. Anything else that jumps out at you? And I'm leaving it on this page for a reason.
The description is too large, maybe?
I mean, it's okay. Could it be improved? Probably, but you know. I want to look at these numbers.
People like 6,000 liked it, so they have quite a lot of followers to members to this.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but do you remember how many members I told you this organization has?
40.
But I think this organization is kind of a specific. They don't care, it looks like, as much for their members, because this is association that everyone anyway is willing to participate and become the members, let's say. So they're not marketing anything, so it's not a business, I don't know.
Right. No, and I think that you make very fair points. And again, because I'm not affiliated with this organization, I don't know what's in their communications plan. I don't know what their exact goals are for having this Facebook page. But as an outside observer, there's a few things that come to mind. The fact is, they are investing time, money, and resources in maintaining this page. So there should be some type of goal or objective for it, right? What I do know is this is an association comprised of individuals. They have 45,000 members, but they only have 6,500 following. So while yes, 6,500 objectively is a large number, in the context of their membership, that's less than a fifth. And the purpose of social media typically, by the way, is when it's a public page. I'm not talking about private by invitation only pages, but public pages means that you're trying to capture more than just your members. So having your members following you is the bare minimum in terms of your target audiences for a publicly facing social media page. This is where you can also connect with potential partner organizations. This is where you can cross promote. This is where you can perhaps put some information about advocacy. So again, without having the benefit of knowing exactly what their goals for this Facebook page are, as someone on the outside, I would say you don't even have a fifth of all of your members following you. This is where I would now go back to our plan under the evaluate step 8, which is, let's look back at what were our goals for this Facebook page. How are we doing in achieving it? And assuming that they would like more followers, including their own members, what is it we need to change? Because I mean, we are active and it's an attractive looking page, but there's a disconnect somewhere. So that's really just kind of the lesson or the takeaway from this particular example. So we're running low on time. We started a few minutes late, so I hope you'll indulge me for taking a few extra minutes. But then what we are talking about, coming back to this example, is what are the essentials for your social media? So first and foremost, when it's that profile, when I said, you know, it's attractive looking, it's sleek, it needs to be sure to reflect your brand. So whatever that feeling is, when people see your logo or they meet a member of your team from your association, what is it you want them to feel? That needs to be reflected in the physical look of your profile on your social media page. You need to have consistency. So if you've established, like, you know, for, you know, you have a certain type of logo and that logo has a certain type of font, if you use certain types of colors in your website and those colors are reflecting your logo, use those same colors for consistency. Remember CAR, consistency, use that in your profile. This is really crucial. Working web links. You always want to make sure, first and foremost, that you have a link to your main website within a social media page. Insofar as you can potentially link to other social media pages or other resources, like coming back to Nini, if you're working with those university career groups and they're online, go ahead and link to them. But at a minimum, you need to have a working web link to your own website. And always check to make those web links, make sure those web links first. Again, I know it sounds like I'm picking on the Cal CPA group. I'm really not. But on that Facebook page, again, when I was preparing for this, the link to their website doesn't work. And that's just kind of unprofessional. That impacts your brand. That makes me think, man, if you guys can't even manage to get me back to your website, then what is that going to say about the quality of services you provide me as a member? And again, this may not be consciously something I think, but when I'm making that decision about joining or not joining, that's in the back of my mind. That's the subconscious. So always check your links to make sure they work. Again, contact information. How can you get a hold of us at our association and encourage people to reach out to you? Because you get new members and you retain members through personal connection. And this is something that is different from, say, a website, but you need to create some type of internal standards for content. So for example, what types of information can be posted? So this would be for whoever is responsible internally for managing your social media, they need to have parameters. So do we use this social media platform for events? Do we use this social media platform for reaching out to our young professionals or our young people? Are we using this social media platform? Because there's actually no benefit. There's actually a potential drawback. If you are taking the same message and just uniformly applying it to every single communications platform, because if you have very intentionally crafted a customized message and you are very intentionally using certain communications platforms for certain purposes, you completely defeat the purpose of that if you're just blindly using the same message across all of them. So again, having those standards for this is what we want to say to this audience on this platform. But then also, who can post? If it is a public, or even if it's a private by invitation only, typically you're going to have some type of, like on Facebook, it's, people can comment, on LinkedIn, people can, create discussion boards. But who do you want? If it's a closed group, then you've already established it's those who are invited can participate. But who can post and what can they post? You need to have standards of appropriate conduct. So very commonly when someone joins a group, one of the first things they see is like, what is acceptable and not acceptable? So for example, you need to be respectful to other people that are posting on here. No inappropriate language. Keep it focused on our industry or association. So make sure you have that as a public facing for anyone if you are allowing for public or postings by individuals that are not within your association. And then this is also really important. So when it comes to, we talk about a post catching fire, which is, it's getting shared, you're getting comments on it. When you can really see that the communication or your message is getting out there. One of the really effective ways to do that is by tagging other people within the post or by hashtag including other organizations or @ different initiatives. Because what that's doing is that is then inviting other people, notifying them that, hey, we have a post on our website, on our social media site, and we are calling you out specifically. So for example, coming back to EBA, let's say that, let me pull them back up. So what I liked about this, for example, is, so we have hashtag EBA youth. That then links it to another initiative of EBA. And anyone that is working on that can then go ahead and reshare or repost this. You have a web link here. If you are in, there was another one that I really liked where I think you guys highlighted your team. Oh, okay. So I love this also, by the way, that they are taking an opportunity to appreciate their team. And then when you tag someone like Miriam, excuse me, you are inadvertently connecting to her entire network, because she's going to see, Miriam, that she was linked, and then she's going to say, oh, I'm going to go ahead and share this post. And let's say Miriam has like 1,000 followers. All of a sudden, you now have 1,000 additional followers that you didn't have before for that post. So really utilizing tags, hashtags, those @ initiatives is a way to catch fire. So I am now, and we did start a little bit late, so I'm right at time, but I understand if anyone needs to leave, but that is the end of my presentation. But does anyone have any questions or comments for the good of the group that you know, anything we discussed that needs clarified? Salome, I see your hand up. What can I do for you?
So if I may jump to the part of drafting and crafting messages. So first of all, thanks a lot for a very smooth, interactive, very informative presentation. So about the crafting messages, probably I was thinking while you were talking that there are two ways to determine what ways work best. So one can be maybe conducting focus groups and asking your members, for example, what Nini mentioned about the frequency of the information they get, the language of the messages and so on. And another way is probably experimenting. So you may draft the strategy in the table that you showed us, and experiment, then evaluate, and then change where the changes are needed. So maybe in practice, in your practice, or the organizations that you work with, which is more effective, like resource effective, and which is like the better way to use in that case. Because for me, and in our case, messaging, the part of crafting messages is probably the hardest one, because you have to consider a lot of factors. So yeah, which can be a better way to start with?
Great question. And so I think maybe one of the ways to start at the end of your question, when it comes to crafting, because there's so many different considerations, I'm guessing you're talking about there's so many different segments of your audience. I think the way to really help you is, again, this is a very simplistic overview of a plan, but actually creating that list and breaking down who are your key stakeholders. And key is really the important word here, because your communications are going to reach out to a lot of people you intend for them to reach, and maybe people who you didn't intend, but it's great that they heard it. Prioritizing who it is you want to talk to, and how do you prioritize who it is you want to communicate with, goes back to your goals. So in this case, if the organizational goal is to increase the number of young professionals that are members, then that determines who is one of your key target stakeholders. Now, are other professionals or mid-career professionals going to hear about it? Yeah, and that doesn't mean that you don't communicate with them, because you probably have a lot of mid-career professionals that are already your members, but they fall into this category and they receive a different type of message. So I think it's really segmenting out who is everyone you're currently speaking to, and for what purpose, and then looking at your goals. Is there anyone missing in that list? Are there others that we should be reaching out to? Then when you have that list, prioritizing. So if we only have so much time and money and resources, let's say we only have time to customize a message to 3 key stakeholder groups, and you have a list of 10. That it's all a matter of prioritizing. It doesn't mean you don't talk to the other 7, but maybe you just have a more generic message for them, and that's okay. That's okay. But if you have a very targeted, specific goal, and you need to reach out to a specific group in order to reach that, and it is a priority for your organization, then that's where you start.
Thanks a lot. So once the segments are prioritized and identified, after that, about the messaging and the frequency of those messages and the information they get. So which one is better, to make some focus groups and or maybe conduct some surveys to ask our target audience, what they want to hear, how they want to hear, and which frequency is more preferable for them, or to experiment, plan, and then evaluate, and then make changes?
So in this case, again, it depends. So if you're talking about your current members, you just ask them. I would definitely say, so again, using the young professional example, you would want to look within your current membership, targeting your young professional members. I would say that in order of operation, you would typically, I would say maybe you start with a couple of phone calls, just calling them directly or emailing them and saying, hey, can I have 5 minutes of your time? And you just ask them. If that doesn't seem feasible, then I would say a focus group. But again, for the focus group, you get the most detailed information, but it could be harder to get people to participate because you're asking for a lot of their time. But you get the best information from a focus group. The other one, which is kind of tried and true, is to just send a survey. Again, 2 to 3 questions where it's like, so what kind of information do you like hearing from us? What do you want to hear? What kind of information do you want to hear about less? And then how often do you want to hear from us? That's your 3-question survey right there. So you can do any of those and they all have different types of benefits, but it all depends upon, like, phone calls require more of staff effort and time. Focus groups require more effort and time from the participants. And surveys are super easy for everyone, but you have no control over how many people actually respond. But I think you're bringing up a really important point, which is data mine from within your existing network. And then if you want to, and then from there, I would say, go ahead and experiment with your non-members based upon the feedback they get. That's where the experimentation, don't experiment with your current members. Find out from them what others like them in the industry who are not members, what they're seeing and feeling and wanting. And based on that, you craft for your membership drives at least.
Thanks a lot. Very
You're
useful.
welcome. Anyone else? Okay, well, if anything comes up, if any of you have a question, please feel free. You can either communicate it to Tina, or if you have my email address, Tina, by the way, feel free to share my email address. Feel free to reach out to me directly, or, Tina, you can always put together a list and I'm happy to get back to you all. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry we went a little bit over, but I do appreciate your active participation. And I really hope that this helps give you some confidence and direction for ways that you can be more effective in your communications, both for your association goals and also for your advocacy.
Thank you very much,
Erica.
Erica. Thank you for preparing this interesting presentation, and I'm sure that everyone has their own takeaways today. We can actually take a photo as well, a group photo, before we leave. Nini apologized, she had to leave for another meeting, and thank you, our dear partners, for participating, asking interesting questions, and sharing your experiences of communication. And for me, this CARS principle was very interesting, Erica, and other tips that you provided. So I'm sure I hope that it was interesting for you too. So let's smile now. And 1, 2, 3. This is one shot. And I'm going to get another one too. And if you have any questions, please write me, and I will share gladly the information that Erica provided today. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.